Thanks for coming, guys. So I think we just start by, I'd like you to introduce yourselves individually, just say maybe where you're at now, and maybe a little bit about what you did on the original GTA. Billy, do you want to kick off?
I'm Billy Thomson. I'm Creative Director at Ruffian Games just now, and I started on the first day at DMA with these guys. First game was GTA, obviously. Then we went on to Tactics, which was a highlight of my career. It was a load of shit. And then we went on to GTA 2, and then me and Steve left, and we worked on a game called Mobile Forces. And then after that, I was lead designer on Crackdown, and then I was creative director on Crackdown 2. Most recently, we've been working on a game called Fragmental, and another VR game called Rad TV that we've just started on.
40 minutes late.
But that's me done. That's me start to finish. I'll just go now.
You have to stay.
Cool. I'm Paul Farley. Again, I started the same day as these guys at DMA. First game I worked on was Grand Theft Auto. It's been pretty much downhill ever since, but it was a good place to start. So yeah, I worked at DMA for about 3 years on GTA, Tactics as well, Wild Metal Country, a couple of games that got cancelled as well, and then left to join Viz, worked on State of Emergency, left there, and then got into mobile gaming probably about 16 years ago now, when it was all SMS and WAP stuff, and everyone thought I was insane for leaving console to go and make mobile games. Why do mobile? It'll never come to anything. So I spent about 6 years at a company called iPlay in Dunfermline, and yeah, it was great. We were kind of like a publisher and a developer and a technology company all rolled into one, which is kind of cool. And then kind of got bored of that and had the opportunity to set up a studio with another couple of guys. So we did that about 10, 11 years ago. So I now run Tag Games, which is a mobile game studio based in Dundee.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Steve Banks. I'm currently at Ruffian Games. I'm a lead designer there, working with Billy. And it's much the same story. Started at DMA on the same day and was level designer on the original GTA. Was responsible for map design, mission design for San Andreas, which was the second city on GTA 1, and Residential, I think it was called, on GTA 2. And kind of followed the same path as Billy up until working on Mobile Forces, where I left and went to Visual Science for a while, and then I was at Cohort Studios as design director before coming back to work with Billy for some strange reason. I'm
like
still not clear about, but
it's kind of like a love story, isn't it? You're always going to end up back together.
yeah, basically just can't get away from him. Am I shouting?
He's only human.
If we could take it back to before that love story started, maybe how did you find yourselves at DMA? Maybe anyone want to kick off with that?
Yeah, I don't know what really happened. I came to Dundee to study architecture at the School of Art, and I did 3 years, and I did my year out in St Andrews, and I hated it, and I knew I was never going to go back and be an architect. So I dropped out, and I drove vans and worked in shops, and I didn't know what I was going to do, really. Just as long as I wasn't back at home, it was all good. And a couple of folks that I'd been at art college with said, oh, we're up at DMA, we just had massive success with Lemmings. You love video games, you've always played video games. I think we used to, like, as students, just spend literally weeks just playing Mario Kart and stuff on the SNES. So you kind of love Nintendo games. Why don't you come and interview? We've got some level design jobs, and I think at that point DMA was working a lot with Nintendo, like second party, and so a lot of the guys from DMA had gone over to Japan, kind of learned what was happening there, and saw that Nintendo were using like game designers for the first time. I thought this was a great idea, so they'd bring that back to DMA and sort of create these roles across the whole studio on pretty much all of the games. So they had, I don't know, it must have been 4 or 5 level design roles that were open at one time. So went and interviewed and somehow got it and thought, do this for 6 months, it's better than working in a shop, and see what happens. And yeah, 20 years later, still doing it.
I was slightly different. I did electronic and electrical engineering at Abertay for about a year and a half, and Jesus, I realised I hated it. So I did, similar to Paul, I dropped out. And at that time, I was working part-time in McDonald's, and they sacked me. Fucking. how'd you like that, motherfucker? So I was unemployed for about 6 months, 7 months, and there was an advertisement in a local paper in the Courier, and my girlfriend had said, you should apply for this, that sounds really cool, you're always playing games, you love games. And I just thought, why the fuck would they hire me? So I didn't actually apply, and it was a few weeks after that, my girlfriend kept leaving this cutout of the Courier on my bed, and just like trying to entice me into applying for it, and I used to play football on a Sunday, and my mate, I was skint, I had no money, I never even had a wallet at the time, and my mate said, do you want to go for a pint after football? And I was like, I have no money, so he says, I'll take you for a couple of pints. So we went for a couple of pints, and then I went up the road, and I was a bit half cut, and I ended up writing this letter to DMA to see if I could get a job there, and then somehow got an interview, and then, similar to Paul, I ended up in this job and did not have a fucking clue what I was doing, and basically tried to keep my head down for the first 6 months to a year and not get sacked. And I don't know, DMA weren't like McDonald's, they kept me on.
Thanks, Billy. A lot of good careers advice for my students there, I think. Steve, tell me you didn't drop out of uni as someone who works for
Well,
uni.
unfortunately, yeah, it's a similar story. I actually left school and I didn't have a clue what I wanted to do. So I actually worked for about 4 years in the real world. I was a traditional sign writer. After that, I was a lifeguard for about 2 years. I don't know how that happened, but it did. I then went to Arcadia to do an HND in computing, which I actually did complete that part of it. And I returned into third year to do my degree, but it was business computing. I had no interest in it at all. I wanted to do something creative, and I dropped out and didn't really tell anybody and just kind of stayed in my flat for a few weeks because I was too worried about telling my parents. And luckily, timing-wise, noticed an advert in the Courier for a level designer at DMA Design. I knew at the time that they'd made Lemmings in Dundee, but I mean, I had no idea that it was such an established company of like 100 plus people. I mean, I thought it was just made in someone's bedroom. I didn't think they made proper games as such. And as far, I'd never had any plans to make games. I enjoyed playing games, but I didn't think it was possible to have a career in making games. So I applied for the job, and at the time I'd been playing Unirally, which I discovered on the first interview that DMA made that. I didn't even know that at the time. So I turned up for the first interview, got a second interview where I was told to bring a portfolio. I had no idea what that portfolio was meant to contain, so I painted a picture on the back of some lining paper of a Unirally track that I just came up with some new mechanics. And I thought I better add something else, and they had these like cutesy characters. I can't even remember what they were. So I painted them round about the border, rolled it up, borrowed a suit off my dad that was too big, and turned up for the interview, and yeah, got the job somehow.
Fantastic. I was going to follow up with what advice you would give young people here to break into the industry, but it seems to be drop out of uni, so I might just skim over that, if that's all right.
To be fair, there wasn't any courses when we were... The first game design course, I think, started the year or 2 years after we started. So, I mean, like Steve said, none of us, well, I know I didn't anyway, I never knew that making games was possible. That was like playing for fucking Man United or something. It's just ridiculous. It was never something that was even an option, so...
Yeah, there you go. Stay in school, kids. Let's go back to your starting at GTA. What was your first week like at DMA? And I guess the game was up and running, or it was underway?
Yeah, I think at that stage it was still called Race. Well, it was called Race and Chase. My first day was one of crushing disappointment because we kind of got the tour. You know, I think I'm like the second. It was it's the worst interview process I've ever been through for a game.
I've only found this out last night. You two got tours. I never got a fucking tour.
You didn't get a tour. You were like
Obviously, never
borderline.
thought they were hiring me. They must have thought, well, this guy's not getting a job.
You're a last minute borderline decision. The other guy dropped out. I got a tour, and be glad you didn't get the tour because we got the tour, and at that point they were using Silicon Graphics workstations, Onyx machines for some of the stuff on Body Harvest, and you walked in, it was like mission control at Houston. It just looked amazing. For me, I was just like, wow, this is incredible. I want to work on this stuff. And Body Harvest looked pretty cool at that stage. And I just wanted to work on Body Harvest. So imagine my crushing disappointment when day one, you've got to work with Billy and Steve, and you're on Race and Chase. And
that was the bonus.
Yeah, it started to go off a bit after that. But Race and Chase at that point was a really ugly-looking, kind of Amiga-ish type game. The visuals were awful. There was no game there at all. It was just nothing really. So we kind of knew we had a lot of work to do, but we had no idea what we were doing. So the first week was just, like Billy said, it was like head down, just trying to find out what's going on. Meet people, find out what the job actually entails, and no one knew. It was like.
Yeah, see, the thing that I remember was when we first got sat down, and we were told we were going on it. I didn't mind getting put on it. I was just happy to be there, to be honest. I was fucking sacked from McDonald's. So they came in. It was Craig Arbuthnot. It was our lead, but there was no design at the time in DMA. So he was head of QA. They just kind of like lumped design into QA because they didn't know what to do with us. So we had this QA manager who came across, and I remember him giving us this big bit of graph paper. It was like 256 by 256, fucking enormous bit of graph paper. And he just took a pencil and put this dot in one of the single squares and just said, that's the player, that's the map. On you go kind of thing. And I just thought, oh shit. and then later on we get the scripting language and stuff, and that was even worse. That was like panic stations for me, because it's everything that I didn't want to do. I never wanted to write code. I didn't want to script, and then suddenly there you are. You've got a full scripting language, and you're doing all the missions from scratch. The first week was scary for me, I would say. And then the other one as well. Remember, Craig said, go away and just come up with any idea you like any film, anything you think. Just describe it, put it down on paper, and we'll get it in the game. And we were like, shit, really, anything at all? Yeah, oh yeah, go on. So we were away writing fucking stories, and then we handed them to the team, and the team basically just thought, why the fuck did we hire these idiots? Can't do any of that. It's like you can get in a car and get out the car. That's it. that was my first week.
Yeah, when we first started, we never had any PCs for about the first couple of weeks. And then we got them one at a time and had to share them. I mean, back then, it's like I was struggling to find my way around a PC, never mind actually make a game on one. As Billy said, I still remember when we first were given the graph paper, I thought, well, I can draw, I can create a map. We were first given an in-house editor, which, as Billy said, GTA was 256 by 256 blocks by 6 blocks high. So it was kind of 3D, but the editor was in 2D, so each level was a 2D layer, and then you'd have to kind of almost move up every time you wanted to place a block. So it's quite awkward to use, but I could understand what I had to do. It's like take these little tiles and place them in squares. Mm-hmm. But then we were told that we were going to get a scripting language, and I think the first thing that me and Billy done was looked at each other and went, what the fuck's a scripting language? I had no idea what it was, never mind how to use one. And we sat and stared at that for probably 2 weeks.
I just kept thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm not going to get a job in McDonald's now. I'm like, fucking screwed.
And I think it didn't help either, because the coder that created the scripting language was, I think, he was insane. He was a very old school bedroom coder. Apart from, I don't think he'd ever left his bedroom, so he had no social skills whatsoever. So if you tried to ask him for any advice, he used to actually growl at you like a wild animal.
But he was in the other building, so you had to phone him up and say, oh, can you come over and fix it?
No, that was James.
Talking about Scary James.
Yeah.
We actually called him Scary James. He was fucking mental at this point.
So it took a long time to get to grips with the scripting language. Apart from Paul. I think Paul instantly churned out about 120 missions.
Yeah, but what the guys...
they were all fucking bank jobs.
But yeah, I had some folk in China that I was like passing all the work to and then getting it back the next day. No, but what the guys haven't mentioned, which is slightly embarrassing for me, is that, again, I was computer literate to a point, but, like DOS was something I'd never used, I'd never programmed or anything. So I think the first week of like writing scripts, oh, it's great, I can do this. I'm kind of into it, and it wasn't too bad to get started with it. It got more complex and worse as time went on. But I think at the end of that first week, I was like, oh, del star.star, what does that do? And I just deleted everything that I'd done, and because there were no backups at that point, so I was like, oh crap. So the next week I had to work really hard for a couple of days, like staying late just to like get all the stuff I'd done the week before. But we were just like making mistakes left, right, and center. Again, and we just make it up as we went along. And I think at that point in the industry, there was no Unity or Unreal, there were no tools and stuff there off the shelf. Everything was being made, in-house, and the guys that were making that stuff, they didn't know what we needed as designers either. So there was a lot of like trial and error, and a lot of error, a lot of mistakes being made.
What sort of shape were those in-house tools in? What tools did you actually have at your disposal?
Just like Steve started describing the editor, it's really hard to try and visualize the way it worked, because all you guys are obviously using 3D editors like Unity, UE4, Lumberyard, whatever it might be. This thing was like a flat black grid with white lines, and that's all you saw. And imagine every single tile just being a box that you've got to put a texture on either of the four sides or the top. And you weren't allowed to put them on the top unless it was actually the top of the building. So you had to just, say it was the front left corner of a building, you would only have a tile on the top side and the other side, but you wouldn't do it on the lid. And the way that it worked is you would be going through the whole map, just scrolling around, and you'd have this little thing up the top right, which was like an unfolded box, so kind of like a cross of squares. And that's the way that you went around. So you couldn't really view anything. You had to click on the individual squares and look up there to see if there was tiles on it, if it was sides. It was really...
It took ages. I mean,
Yeah,
it
so
took
it was
absolutely
hard
ages to
to
build a
use.
map, because then the only way you could actually test it and to actually see what it looked like in game was actually just to build the game and then run it. And so it just took for and even just updating, even scrolling across the map was just like so slow.
And then like you'd be driving around the game, and then you would just catch this like little flicker. You'd notice something, and you're like, shit, what's that? And then there was no way you even get coordinates from the game. So you just had to like look at it and go, it's on the top left somewhere. And then you'd kill the game, go back in the header, and then just go around blind trying to find this one rogue tile that had a texture on it that shouldn't have done. It was,
I guess I was going to say something that was good. I mean, I talk about the scripting language and how we were, we had no idea what it was. But once we actually got to grips with it, because we had such a limited tool, you became an expert in it, and you got really creative when you were trying to achieve something. So you knew, it's like, right, I want this to happen. I can't do it in the scripting language. And it was really, really good fun trying to find ways of doing that. And Billy came up with an absolutely genius method of, we had no way.
He's never called me a genius.
No. Well, that was 20 years ago, and I thought he was a genius, but he's not repeated that since, so I think he peaked early. But he had a system where we could create pedestrians underneath the city, and every time we had the ability to kill these pedestrians and to be able to tell that they were killed. So if we wanted to track any events in the missions, we would kill a pedestrian, and then we could read in the fact that was
the way
killed.
that I did it was that I created a hole inside a building, and then every time I was basically I didn't know what I was doing, but I was creating a counter using dead peds. So you would create the ped and then just kill him. So you'd just create an explosion, and he'd die, and then I'd be like, right, okay, one of them are dead. Like, get another one, oh, he's dead, another one, another. And I remember that I had it on, like, in every script, and Brian Baird, who was he replaced Scary James as the coder for the scripting language, and he just went, what are you doing here? And I tried to explain to him what I was doing, and he went, oh shit, you've created a counter. Like, the scripting language doesn't have a counter, and I didn't even know what I was doing. Apparently it was genius, though.
I'll give you credit for the one thing that you've done in 20 years.
So in terms of the design process back then, was there a process, or was it a little bit less formal? That's what I'm thinking.
There was no process at all. I mean, nothing was written down. It was left to us. I mean, we were in charge of a city each. That included the map design and the missions that went with it. And it was really just down to us to do anything that we wanted.
I never ever once got feedback from anybody other than these guys and Test. But Test was generally just like, this is broke, you need to fix it. But I never ever got anybody above us coming along, and because we never had a lead. There was nobody above us, so we never had anybody coming across going like, oh, this is cool, but you should try this, or whatever. There was nothing like that. We just had to, it was like peer review. You were just trying to impress Paul. I mean, I was constantly, the thing that was good, not to say that Paul was rubbish or anything, but I was always looking at Steve's stuff, because Steve kept doing what I thought was like really creative stuff with the scripting language. And every time I saw him do something like that, I thought, well, I'm going to better that. I'm going to do something better. And it kept me on my
you
toes,
blew up
if you like.
Pets Underground.
I'm not using the word genius, though. I'm just...
There was quite good competition, though. I think even like between the three of us and stuff. I always kind of felt like I was the guinea pig because my map was getting used first. So like Liberty City was always like, it was okay, but it wasn't amazing, and then the scripts and the missions were, of course, it's kind of the wrong way around, really, because a lot of the kind of work we did on the first map was kind of the earliest scripts and stuff, so the missions were the least sophisticated, maybe the least enjoyable ones, but those were the ones that everyone played, obviously, because they're the first ones in the game. But there was good, I think, it was friendly competition, I think, at DMA at the time as well, that there was no production, there was no producers, well, there were producers later on.
Yeah, at the end of GTA there was, but at the start there wasn't.
It was too late by then, wasn't it, really? It's like trying to make sense of this mess. So there was no producers, there was no schedule, no budget, really. It was just, here's some time, some guys in a room that. And I think the really remarkable thing was, I think we had one person on the team, two maybe, that had actually shipped the game before. Like Keith was like the lead of the whole project because he'd shipped the game before. It was amazing.
Lemmings 3 or something
yeah,
like that.
it was just like that. So you've got this bunch of folk that like dropouts from uni and other grads and stuff, at DMA, which was perceived to be like one of the best studios in the world at that time for making games. And we went in, and I think that rubbed off pretty quickly, because Billy's saying like he went in and he was quite nervous. I think we were all really nervous to start with, like, what are we doing here? But within a couple of months, that kind of arrogance, I think, kind of rubbed off, and we were all like pretty ballsy, a bunch of young folk in a room just kind of making games, dream come true. And but it was quite positive. No one ever said no on GTA. It was always like, oh, that's a great idea, let's do that, and you just do it. It's like, oh, let's throw tanks in, let's do radio control cars, let's do this, let's do that, and that's how you got stuff like the Harry Krishnas and stuff going in, because no one ever said no. So it all just ended up, and at the end it was a mess, and it had to be tied together. In the last, I guess, 6 months of development were pretty horrible as we tried to fix bugs and try and pull this into something that was coherent. But it was really fun for a good couple of years. We were just throwing stuff at it to see what stuck.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that was really enjoyable was just because it was quite an early sandbox game, and we were trying to create that living, breathing city. The game changed from just being a large-scale city with, I think it was 4 game modes that we're talking about to start with. So it was very traditional, where there'd be like a cannonball race, A to B. There was a getaway driver, and then there was chasing a getaway driver, and you would just drop in and out and play a mission at a time. But I mean, as was mentioned earlier, a lot of the ideas came from films that you'd watched growing up. So, for example, the Dirty Harry films provided the phones that you answered for missions. Even the remote control cars came from that. And I think we had the bus that you had to keep above 50 miles an hour from speed. And when everything started going in and we had all the missions working in the game, I always remember the first time I understood what. It was probably the first experience of emergent gameplay, where we were putting in missions and we expected them to be played in a certain way. And I remember one of the QA guys, or it was maybe Brian Lawson, one of them, where I had a mission, I spent a lot of time expecting the player to play it in a certain order to then destroy this car and make it really difficult. You had to blow up the car. And we had kill frenzies in there at the time, which were, one of them was remote control cars. And he went to play this mission that I'd set up to be quite difficult to complete. He jumped into the van to trigger the kill frenzy and used the remote control car to just go and blow the car up straight away. And I was like, well, you can't do that. And then I was like, well, actually, that's quite cool. So, we started to experience lots of systems within the sandbox that started to work with each other, and there was some really cool stuff.
What I was going to say is one of the things that I learned that I was doing wrong at the start was every time a tester found a way to do something that I hadn't intended, I went and fixed it. I was like, no, you're not doing that. No, that's not the way I designed it. And I'd go in and fix it. And it was only towards the end of development that I realized that having these multiple ways of doing things, even though I'd never intended it, that was cool. And I was actually getting rid of the cool stuff. And I had to start going through my missions and taking the stuff back out, so that the alternate ways of doing stuff was actually still an option, and not treating them like bugs. That was like you say, it was kind of, it's probably not quite emergent gameplay from that respect, but it was definitely an eye-opener for me to allow the player to beat the designer. Do you know what I mean? I had to think back to when I was playing games myself, and there was nothing better than feeling like I found a different way of doing this. They never knew about that, and I've broken that. And it's recognizing that it's possible, but then making it that the mission doesn't crash. Do you know what I mean? So because I mean, most of my missions, I don't know if you guys were the same, but about 70-80% of my mission scripts, as far as the lines were concerned, was all fail conditions. It was all like, no, don't do that, I'll get back in the car. No, wait a second, you've got to get that guy. No, the car's got to be blue, it's not green. It was all that kind of stuff. It was all these like fixes for trying to like direct the player into doing the right thing. And the actual gameplay was like 20% of the script. Everything else was just hand-holding the player.
I mean, we had to script all the cleanup and stuff as well, and we had to keep track of all the scoring, everything basically.
Everything was in the script.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting because like everyone goes, oh yeah, Sandbox gameplay, it's really great. You know, I love Sandbox games, but you just don't realize that how much labor goes into looking at all the different fail conditions. The QA as well is just insane. I think like you kind of get to a point where you just kind of give up and go, well, if the player finds something, a way of getting around this, then fair enough. And the game was full of bugs as well. I mean, like even the release version of the game was full of bugs, and I think that the PR guys did a really great job of spinning that. They're like, oh yeah, it's emergent behavior. The pedestrians are meant to do this, and if you followed someone around, they'd end up like in a cul-de-sac banging their head against the wall. Oh yeah, mental health issues there, and stuff like that. And it's like, oh yeah, there's all these different like AI behaviors in the game that there really isn't. They're just bugs, and bad stuff happens all the time. But I think that's the beauty of GTA. I mean, looking back at that first game now. It was really messy. It was like punk rock of games. There was so much stuff in there that was just broken. But when it kind of came together, people were able to use their imagination, because it's so abstract as well, because it was cartoon and top down and didn't look particularly amazing. Folk used their own imaginations, I think, and kind of impressed their own imaginations on the game and kind of filled in the blanks, which kind of like part of the fun. I think we kind of lost that a little bit now, not just from the GTA series as it is now, but I think from games in general as they become more photorealistic. People don't necessarily use their imaginations. I think that's why Minecraft's so successful, because it really encourages kids to add their own implied behaviors and stuff onto the game. So, yeah.
It's like you were saying as well, Steve, about one of the bugs in GTA that made it cool was when remember the police code went in, and it was fucking mental. It would just chase you everywhere. You couldn't get rid of them. They were an absolute nightmare, and they almost fixed that. And it was kind of Steve going across and just going, don't fix that. That's cool. You need to keep that stuff in. That's what's making the game a bit insane. Like, if you take that out, then you get back to, remember Keith Hamilton, our lead, I remember demoing the game to, I think it was BMG at the time, and he was fucking stopping at the traffic lights and everything. I was like, run somebody over, blow something up, for fuck's sake. Just sitting there, just like, right,
that was
look, the traffic lights work, look at that.
The reason thing was...
It's because his approach to the game as well was that we ended up with, we had ambulances and fire engines and police, and it's like, we would play the game and we were told they were there, so you would do something and it's like, where's the fire engine and where's the police? And you'd never seen them. And it's because he was literally spawning them at their relevant stations and navigating all the way, route finding from that point to where you were. So it took about 20 minutes for it to actually get to the action. So, it was crazy. So,
but you had like 20 people that played like completely different games. So a whole bunch of people that were playing like strategy games and sim games like Keith,
Yeah, well, he's trying to create a simulation of a city,
yeah. And we're playing arcade games and stuff and races and stuff. And we're like, oh no, it has to be far more immediate. So you had all these like diverse personalities and people wanting to do different things with the game, and no one's saying, oh no, you can't do that. This is the schedule, this is the plan, this is the design. There wasn't a design. So it's just like all these ideas kind of converging in one place, and it was really messy, but it was fun. I've never experienced anything like it since in the games industry. I think that's...
We're completely like that at Ruffian.
So I was going to ask how it was decided which ideas made it in, but it sounds like basically anything goes. Was there anything that was too crazy that you would like to have put in there, or you didn't get a chance to put in?
I mean, someone had like put in like burning churches and stuff, and I don't know. It's just some things were just going a little bit too far.
I minced up humans and turned them into sausages in GTA 2. So
yeah, I mean, it was pretty much anything goes. I mean, there were certain things like around.
We asked for a dog at some point, but then we're told no. Yeah, because you're allowed to run down humans, but not animals.
Not a dog.
Yeah.
And I think in Germany the blood was green as well, wasn't it? So like, stuff like that had to get.
It was black, was it not? It's always like oil coming out of robots or some shit like that.
Okay. What about looking back on the rest of your careers then? How has your experience on GTA sort of shaped what you do now?
For me, the one thing, it's kind of touching on what Steve was saying earlier on. We were quite limited in what we could do. with the scripting language, so you had to get creative. You really did. And you had to solve a lot of problems as well, because we didn't get a whole lot of help. It was kind of like the scripting language is there, and it was more about like maintaining it to make sure that it worked rather than giving us features when we needed them. So we had to basically script the features ourselves. So I think it turned me into a pretty decent problem solver. It definitely made me more creative because I had to think. I'm not going to say it, I hate people that say outside the box, but that kind of thing, you know what I mean? I know I said it, I feel fucking ashamed of myself. But, but it's that kind of thing. It's like trying to think of ways around things. There's too many people these days that just define the problem and they just stop. And that's what we did. We try to find ways around all the time. And I mean, sometimes I'm sure there are loads of things that we try to do that we just never managed to. But that's what's changed for me anyway. Just that sense of kind of like, can't do it that way, right? Okay, well, how can I do it? And constantly trying to find a way to make it work. So that's what I've got out of it anyway.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that I went on and worked on mobile at a point where mobile really wasn't sexy. It wasn't cool. Some people say it wasn't sexy or cool now, but you know, when we were making like SMS games where you've got like 64 characters, and it's like, okay, we're going to do FIFA SMS. And you're like, oh, okay, right, how are we going to do that? You know, it's thinking creatively where you've got very tight restrictions. And I think like, you know, everything in GTA was restrictive. You know, the scripting language, the editor, you know, everything was laborious. You know, it wasn't pleasurable to use. You know, there was the kind of the creative stuff, but taking a creative idea to actually putting something in the game, you know, it took days. You know, it really did. So it was really kind of hard going. I think that was, you know, really good. I guess that, you know, like I said, that since being in DMA, I've never, you know, worked in a scenario where there's been no budget, you know, and I think that, you know, the Lemmings money was amazing. The Lemmings was a massive success, and that paid for Body Harvest and GTA and Silicon Valley and all the rest of it. And that meant that there was this kind of, I guess, like a creative bubble, you know, just that space for like 4 or 5 years, and there was no sort of financial pressure to deliver a game. It was like, and Dave was always, when the game's ready, the game's ready, you know.
Although we did lose our bonus, remember that?
We'd
remember
never,
when they were counting down?
never made a penny
it was like,
from it.
I think there was a 20 grand bonus in at one point if we hit the deadline.
We never hit any deadlines.
No,
never.
But I do remember that we were having these 2 weekly meetings. Remember, did we sit down? And Keith would stand in the middle and go, "How are you getting on?" "Yeah, I'm fucking. It's not happening." And then he would just go around, "Okay," and he'd write it down on his wee clipboard. And then they started counting down how much money we were losing per. "Yeah, we just lost $1,000, guys."
Just in the meeting, it was like, we've been here for an hour, man. It's like, that's our bonus is gone. But it was, I think, towards the end, there were more financial pressure because of where the studio was at. We hadn't shipped the game in years. There was a lot of pressure there. So I think that, yeah, it was great, but also I think it would be unrealistic to expect that we'd ever experience maybe that ever again, unless, you know, we're in a situation where, you know, we've got a game that's just such a massive success that would pay for that level of experimentation. I guess that, you know, I'm you know, really quite kind of jealous of the likes of Supercell, who have had that success and now can afford basically to throw away 90% of the games they come up with, and not worry too much about, you know, where's that next.
It's not the money, is it, Paul? It's not the money.
It's the creative.
How about you, Steve? Have you got any?
I've actually forgotten the question because he's talked for so long.
I was asking about how your experience at DMA has influenced your career thus far.
I think something that I think was really good was that we actually got to do game design, we got to do level design, we got to do scripting, and you know, since then I've worked with a lot of people where there might be a designer that doesn't do level design, they might not have done scripting before, and to just actually be responsible for everything and to work from a game from start to finish. I mean, within the first 4 years, we'd shipped 3 games. And that was just
2 of them were good.
Yeah, that was just a great experience and really set you up for the rest of your career because you'd done a little bit of everything, and you'd seen the whole process from start to finish. And if nothing else, you knew exactly what you shouldn't be doing because every mistake that you could have made, we made it on.
It kind of spoiled you a wee bit as well, though, because like you said, certainly for GTA and GTA 2 anyway, our city was ours. Nobody else touched it. It was like for everything. We designed the map. We put all the textures on the buildings. We decided where they were going to go. We designed the missions. We scripted the missions. We wrote the text. It was kind of, in fact, the only thing that did get touched was the text because I can't write worth a fuck. So somebody came in and kind of like rewrote my stuff. But everything else was just ours. And I've never had that again since then.
No, I mean, as technology moved on and you know, when you would create level design in a white box in a 3D environment, and then an art team would come in and dress it up. It was quite difficult to sort of hand that over to
give the
someone
stuff
else.
away.
Yeah,
It's like, that's mine, I want to finish.
finish.
I don't like that texture you've put on there. Move the light to the right. I still do that.
Do you think something's been lost then as AAA games in particular have got bigger and more specialist rules have emerged? Has some of that been lost?
I think that's happened with AAA, but I think the cool thing about the indie scene is that that's kind of coming back. People are like responsible for their whole game from start to finish now. It's the AAA thing got so big budget-wise that not many people can do it.
Yeah.
It's not sustainable unless you've got, like Paul said, you've got an absolute shit ton of money to kind of make mistakes and maybe have something that's not a massive success and doesn't get the money back. But the indie development is totally different to that, and I think it's kind of like came full circle where you're back to like your bedroom coders and things along those lines where you've got really cool tools like UE4 and Unity and Lumberyard, those kind of things. So it's I think that's what's happening just now.
Yeah, I mean, I think like games obviously grown like in 20 years since we started at DMA. Gosh, it seems a long time ago. The games industry's changed so much, and like everyone's playing games now. When we started, it was still perceived that games were for like teenage boys, right? And now everyone really is.
Those teenage boys are now fucking 40-year-olds.
60. They're us, right? Yeah. So I think the games industry and the market sort of changed quite dramatically as well. I think that's had a big impact as well. So I think now you've got like games for everyone. So like indie games, it's not necessarily about having the photorealistic graphics or production quality. It's about just providing something that's fun, that's different, and that's really refreshing. And it's great that like over 60s is now a games category where people are making games for the over 60s and stuff. That's amazing. Probably wouldn't have imagined that 20 years ago. So yeah, I think now, I mean, it's definitely not, this is probably the best time ever to make games. The tools are there. You can drop in, a lot of the frustration and the pain that we had 20 years ago has hopefully laid the groundwork for, for where we are just now, where, you can, isn't 12-year-old, 13-year-old can pick up a copy of like Game Maker or Unity and start making games, can get an App Store account for 50 quid and launch their game on the App Store. That's incredible.
It's an amazing time to make games because the tools are so good. The only issue now is discoverability, trying to get people to see your game because there are so many games. Yeah. That's the tough thing now. Yeah. The fact that it's easier to make games just means there's so much more of them, and trying to stand out without a huge marketing budget's really tough.
And I guess like 20 years ago, like it's a blank canvas. Like everything you do is pretty much new. Now it's like, well, how do you innovate? How do you create something new and fresh? I think it's really hard. And so you see, quite often it's a twist or it's a change. And a lot of success right now is happening in China. The Asian market's growing, and going over there, it's just insane. To see how much how popular gaming is. But those companies they're not able to create or innovate. They're just copying what they see in the West and doing it just at a massive scale. So I think that's going to be it's an interesting challenge. I think kind of going forward is like how do we create new experiences for players that keep them interested and engaged? Because when you do that, I mean, you see something like Minecraft. If you get it right, the potential is huge. I mean, that's probably the main reason I got into mobile gaming was the fact that here's an opportunity for like 1 billion people to play your game, like literally 1 billion people. I couldn't imagine that 20 years ago. I was excited just going into like HMV and seeing like GTA on the shelf. And you're like, wow, this is my game. I helped make that, and it's #1. It's on the shelf. That's amazing. And like 100,000 people have bought it, in a month.
It wasn't actually #1. We put it on the shelf in #1.
We did. It was
We actually did that on day one.
#1 in Dundee, right?
In Virgin and Dundee, it was #1 for about an hour until they noticed and put Tomb Raider back in place.
So what was the mood more generally like about the time about launch time? Did you expect it to be a success?
I didn't.
Beyond Dundee.
I mean, the thing that I found was that when it first came out, nobody knew about it, and it was a few months later, wasn't it?
It was
When
a real slow
Max
burner.
Clifford,
Yeah, that was where
they
it
brought
changed.
in Max Clifford, who was all like about sensational and kind of getting the Sun to say ban this sick game and all that kind of shit, and then Jeremy Clarkson does like an hour on Newsnight, kind of going through about how terrible it is, and then it's kind of like, I don't know, nobody had heard about The Exorcist until it was banned, and then everybody wants to see it, and it was, I think that kind of helped.
Oh no, definitely.
With GTA, it was because I mean it was in the top 40 for over a year, but it was a real slow burner. It never just came out and went bang straight in at #1. It was a long time before we hit.
I mean, the
#1.
day of release, we actually did go into Virgin expecting to see our game on the shelves, and realised that it had released on the same day as Championship Manager, whatever version, and Tomb Raider. which took up the whole game section. And we were
We
like,
couldn't find
"Where
the game,
hell's our
remember? We were walking around, couldn't find the
And
game.
I think we found 4 copies sitting at the end of the shelf, so we could spread them out. And as Billy said, we moved them up to the number 1 slot and then left.
Yeah, if we had camera phones at that time, that would have been like a wee snap.
But I think even in the run up to the launch, I mean, it was like pretty painful. The last months of it were pretty horrible, and there was a lot of late nights and crunching, particularly for the code team. They had a lot of bugs to get rid of, and the game just wasn't stable up until like really close. And there was a lot of pressure from the publishers of BMG at the time to get the thing out and get it shipped. So yeah, and I don't know. I think at DMA there was a lot of competition between the teams. I mean, most of the time it was quite friendly, but we had other teams like Tactics were next to us, and they're always like, "Oh, your game's crap. It's never going to do very well." And we're like, "Yeah, but at least ours runs. We're like crashing and stuff. The basics." So I think GTA was always kind of like the runt of the litter at DMA. There always were cooler, sexier games in development, things that you thought had a better chance of success. But I guess the one thing it's taught me over the years is that the things you think are guaranteed to be successes, they often aren't. And it's the unknown, the odd things, the things that are a little bit quirky and different that you think, oh, we'll just put this out and see what happens. Often they're the things that are hugely successful. It catches you by surprise. And I think that GTA was always that hit game waiting to happen. And like the guy said, I mean, it was only once Max Clifford got involved and they kind of ramped up the PR that suddenly folk were like, wow, I want to play this. And when they played it, it wasn't just selling off the back of the notoriety. It was actually a really good game. And folk were like, oh, this is nuts. It's 18 rated, but it's actually really good fun. And they kept playing it. They kept telling their friends. And so that viral thing happened, even before social media.
Yeah.
Well, I think the first glimpse we got was we done a cover disc for PC Zone, I think it was. We had the front cover and center pages, and it was like a 5-minute demo that was on the cover disc.
It was 10 minutes.
And we created this wall of emails in the office because we started getting emails into the company, just people saying, wow, this is great. And we were like, wow, people actually like it. So, I mean, it was a complete surprise that people liked it.
6 minutes. It was a 6-minute demo.
A little counted, didn't it? Like, counted down. I think the thing as well for me that was really amazing, like probably one of the best feelings apart from going into Virgin after these guys had been in to put the game at number 1. I'm like, oh, it's number 1. It's like, Billy and Steve, damn it. Was probably a few months after launch, and all of a sudden, the internet was kind of early, I guess, in terms of its adoption. I mean, we had one PC in the office that was connected to the internet, But all of a sudden you were kind of hearing about people that were making their own versions of the games and creating different vehicles and dropping them into the game and creating their missions. And you're like, you guys are insane. It's so hard to work with the tools.
Like the beginning of the modding scene at that point.
It was really early on, but it was like that was such a buzz. Creatively to see folk taking the thing that you created and then create their own stories, their own narratives in it, and their own little missions. And it was brilliant. For me, that was just an incredible feeling. To think that they love it so much they're going to spend their own time to not just play the game but build their own stuff in it.
I think we're going to get hooked off the
I
stage
was just
now.
going to say, amazingly, we're out of time already, but I just want to say thank you very much to all three of you. And if we could thank our guests. There was an excellent